أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وأسلم على من بعث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So we are now in the 11th part of what is the Quranic synopsis, where we are going through the entire Quran juz by juz, part by part, inshallah ta'ala, and this is the 11th part that we are going to be going through. We are going to finish Surah At-Tawbah, which we began yesterday, and we are going to go on to the entire Surah Yunus and complete that, inshallah, and that will be the end of the 11th part of the Quran, inshallah ta'ala. Now, yesterday we didn't really finish or get to the point where we wanted to get to, or I wanted to get to, sorry. So it'll be good to track back, inshallah, retrace our steps a little bit, and pick up from where we left off, inshallah ta'ala, so that we get a full picture of what is probably one of the most difficult surahs in the Quran. For me personally, it was quite difficult to memorize and to learn. And even the subject matter itself, it's quite sort of, in terms of chronological order, it's not in the right order as we took yesterday, because this surah deals with three main subjects or three main events. The first is the Hajj al-Akbar, which is the Hajj where the Prophet ﷺ sent Abu Bakr to lead the mu'minun in Hajj, in the Hajj processions and the proceedings. So just as Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu left Medina with a large group of the Muslims from the Muhajirun and the Ansar, and obviously this is after the conquest of Mecca in the 9th year of the Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ, he sent Ali ibn Abi Talib after Abu Bakr in order to tell him of the newly revealed verses that were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, which is the opening of the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares him and his messenger to be free of all of the bonds and agreements that had taken place between them and the mushrikun, the tribes, the polytheistic tribes that surrounded Mecca and the Arabian Peninsula. And that the laws to be set in place, that they weren't allowed to come into the masjid anymore. And there was a great difference between those who believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the last day, and those who have a claim to the house of Allah, the Kaaba, by having visited it or being those who were previous custodians of it. So just because they cleaned it every now and again, or they brought water to those pilgrims who used to come before when the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was filled with idols, just because you did this didn't mean that you had any sort of priority over the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, those who have priority in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those who believe in him, follow in his messenger, and believe in the last day. So that was kind of the opening of what happened. And then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when he reached Mecca and they began to carry out the Hajj rituals, Ali ibn Abi Talib, he stood up and he gave the khutbah in front of all of those who were gathered, that these were the new rules that were going to be set in place. So that happened after the Battle of Tabuk. But this story is, or alluded to, and the ayat that are revealed in this regard take place at the beginning of the surah, even though it's supposed to be at the end in chronological order. So that's why it makes the surah a little bit hard to sort of get your head around. Then we go into the second subject, which is, but before we do though, there is a mention of the fact that إِنَّمَا الْمُشْرِكُونَ نَجَسٌ in verse number 28. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِنَّمَا الْمُشْرِكُونَ نَجَسٌ فَلَا يَقْرَبُوا الْمَسْجِدَ الْحَرَامَ بَعْدَ عَامِهِمْ هَذَا. That verily, O you who believe, verily the mushrikun, the polytheists are najas. And najas comes from the word najas, it is the root word, which means to be impure, something that is impure. And we can say that something is najas or najasa, which is the thing that stops us from praying. Anything that stops us from praying is considered najis. So if, for example, I have a wet dream, for example, forget me, somebody has a wet dream, for example, right? And they wake up and they have to have a shower in order to ritually cleanse themselves in order to pray. So that is considered, their state is considered a state of najasa. If a woman goes on her monthly cycle, that period of time is considered najas or najasa, which is basically a ritual state of impurity that stops them from praying. They may have showered and lathered up and soaped up and stuff, right? But as long as they are in that state, and as long as they haven't had that ghusl bath, they are in that ritual state of impurity. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the mushrikun being najas, he doesn't mean that they are physically najas, because they can have a shower, right? They can soap up and stuff. They can use like imperial lather or any of the other like really like top brands of soap and shampoo on them, right? And they can smell like $1 million, but they're still najas, but they're najas not in their physical form, but in their spiritual state, right? So a clear distinction has been made now in this 9th year of the Hijrah that look, there is a line between Iman and Kufr. And that line can never be crossed by either party, right? And that line is drawn in the Kaaba itself, in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala itself. That no one is to go in here and worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the line that's being drawn between monotheism and polytheism. So that was a really strong ayah that was put in this particular surah, but it doesn't mean physical impurity, right? So you can shake their hands, you can sit down with them, you can eat. What's it called, in the same restaurant as them. We even eat in their restaurants anyway. So, so anybody that tells you that they're physically impure, then yeah, it's not. That's not entirely correct. Okay, so from the verses 32 to about 72, that's when the verses were revealed with regards to the preparations for the battle of Tabuk, and it actually starts with. I'll jump to verse number 40, right? So it's encouraging the believers to help the Prophet ﷺ. So the call is made. We spoke a little bit yesterday about the sort of precursors of Ghazwat Tabuk and what it was all about, and how the Prophet ﷺ had told his companions, all of them, right, from the believers to the hypocrites to everyone. Everybody knew about what the Prophet ﷺ intended to do, and he really wanted to encourage everybody to get on board with him and for everyone to be sort of involved in this together. On top of that, it was a very difficult time. In terms of like there was a drought and there was severe heat, and the crops were about to bear their fruits. So it distinguished the believers helping the Prophet ﷺ, rising up to the occasion, and it also helped to see the hypocrites who wanted to come with the excuses to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ accepted all of their excuses. He was like, okay, fine, if you can't come, you can't come. What can I do? But they came with their excuses, and they said, our wealth and our no one's going to be able to look after our business for us, and no one's going to be able to look after our family for us, and so on and so forth. So they had all these excuses to stay home, and they stayed home. And from them were a few believers, which we're going to take a little bit later on, inshallah, in this surah. So it opens up. So this in this section, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, look, even if everybody helps you, and even if nobody helps you, always remember that it is the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that truly matters. And he reminds him of a really, really sort of like one of the most memorable stories. I'm sure we all know the story back to front, the hijrah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where when he's on the hijrah with Abu Bakr, and they are being followed by the mushrikun of Quraysh, and they recognize, or they catch wind that they're being followed, so they go into what we call a cave called Ghar al-Thawr, the cave of Thawr, right? And in this cave, they hid from this the mushrikun that came, and it was really a sort of a niche and a little sort of like a little hill, right? And it wasn't particularly deep or anything like that. And if anybody saw it, you could probably see the contents inside if anybody was hiding anything in there. So the mushrikun, they came and they stood right at the mouth of this cave, right? And I call it a cave, but really it's just like a little hole in a hill that you can hide in. So so they came to the mouth of it, and they couldn't see. For some reason, for some miraculous reason, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had saved the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr from the eyes of the mushrikun, from seeing what was right in front of them. And had they seen them, they probably would have killed them. But they stood right there and they couldn't see them. And there's loads of stories about how a spider had spun its web at the mouth of the cave, and a dove had sort of laid its eggs. And there was a bird's nest at the mouth of the cave, and so when they saw that, they thought, there can't be anybody inside, because all of this stuff is here, right? So they didn't think anything of it. All of those narrations, though, they're weak and they don't have a strong basis, but they're nice to think of, I would assume. So verse number 40, إِلَّا تَنْصُرُوهُ فَقَدْ نَصَرَهُ اللَّهُ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to the believers here, he's not talking to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you don't help him, i.e. if you don't help the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or if you don't help Islam, فَقَدْ نَصَرَهُ اللَّهُ, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has helped him, or helped Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has come to its aid. إِذْ أَخْرَجَهُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ. Just like the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused him to exit his home. إِذْ أَخْرَجَهُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ إِذْ هُمَا فِي الْغَارِ. And the two of them were in the cave, and it was just those two. There was no third. إِذْ يَقُولُ لِصَاحِبِهِ لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. As he says to his companion who was with him. And who is the companion that was with him? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, right? He's called لِصَاحِبِهِ, Sahibi Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the Qur'an, ajib, what a mention, what a mention. Subhanallah. La tahzan, and the Prophet says to him, do not be sad, do not be afraid. Inna Allah ma'ana, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. So Allah is reminding the believers that look, the Prophet had no one around him, Allah still saved him, and he still saved Islam. You guys in your thousands are around him. If you choose to help him, then it is for yourselves. You guys will share in the honor and the nobility of being side by side with the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam in front of the Romans in what is going to be an epic battle between good and evil, not on an Arabian Peninsula scale, but on a global scale. And if you guys don't, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to aid him anyway. And then there's ayat about sort of encouraging the believers to fight in the sake of Allah, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's also mention of the hypocrites wanting to stay behind, swearing by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they have a dire need to stay here. سَيَحْلِفُونَ بِاللَّهِ لَوْ اسْتَطَعْنَا لَخَرَجْنَا مَعَكُمْ. They're going to swear by Allah that if only they could leave with you, they would. And some of them would say that we don't actually have enough money to go, and we can't buy our riding beast, and we have debts with other people, and all these other things, right? Even though they were really, really rich. إِنَّمَا يَسْتَأْذِنُكَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. The only people that are going to ask you to stay behind, they're going to ask you and request of you, Ya Rasulullah, allow me to stay. Those are the people who don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger. وَلَوْ أَرَادُوا الْخُرُوجَ لَأَعَدُّوا لَهُ عُدَّةً. And if they truly wished to go on this expedition with you, they would have prepared for it, right? And we took in the previous surah, in Surah Al-Anfal, right, about وَأَعِدُّوا لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُم مِّن قُوَّةٍ, right? Prepare whatever you can in terms of strength, in numbers and riding beasts, and the sort of the elements of war and so on and so forth. This command came out in the Battle of Badr, right, in the 2nd year of the Hijrah. Fast forward to the 9th year of the Hijrah, 7 years have gone by, and they're still not prepared for any type of battle or any situation. Subhanallah. And it doesn't mean sort of to be physically prepared only, but even spiritually, mentally prepared to be there to defend the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Islam. They're not ready, right? 7 years later, they're still not ready. So if there's something wrong in their hearts, not something wrong in their actions, but something wrong in their hearts. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said at the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, right? فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. In their hearts is a disease, right? In regards to hypocrites. SubhanAllah. All right. Okay. Where is the ayah? Okay. إن تصبهم حسنة إن تصبك حسنة تسؤهم وإن تصبك مصيبة يقولوا قد أخذنا أمرنا من قبل ويتولوا وهم فرحون. So if goodness was to befall you, right? If anything good was to happen to you, they would feel bad about it. وَإِن تُصِبْكَ مُصِيبَةٌ, and if something was a hardship was to befall you, يَقُولُوا قَدْ أَخَذْنَا أَمْرَنَا مِنْ قَبْلِ. They would say that we were well prepared for this. We knew it was going to happen, right? So we made the right choices, and we weren't in the situation that the Muslims found themselves in. Alhamdulillah. وَيَتَوَلَّوا وَهُمْ فَرِحُونَ, and they turn away from the Muslims, not even going to aid them when bad things happen to them, right? They turn away from them, and they are happy with what is going on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he responds, and he tells the Prophet ﷺ to say to them, قُلْ لَن يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا. Nothing will happen to them except that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, and upon Allah let the believers truly rely. And And then there's more ayat about how they swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they're from you and that they're with you. And then they won't let anything happen to you. And as soon as the fight starts, they're going to be there. But as long as like there's no fighting at the moment, we're chilling and so on and so forth. There's loads of ayat about this as well. The types of people who are eligible for zakat are mentioned here as well. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he was collecting all sorts of donations. And the munafiqun, when they would see the believers coming and giving in their jewelry and giving half of their wealth or all of their wealth in Umar and Abu Bakr's case respectively, they would look down at Abu Bakr and Umar and the likes of them in terms of the Sahaba when they would give their wealth, and they would laugh at them thinking these guys are so stupid. What are they doing? They're coming, they're giving their wealth, right, for a cause that they're going to lose. They're going to fight the Romans, man. The Romans are going to wipe the floor with their faces. It's an unwinnable battle, right? So this is the kind of thing that they would do. And every time someone will come and say, Ya Rasulullah, I have donated this, or I'm giving 100 camels or whatever, they would laugh at him and say, look at him showing off and he thinks he's all top, doesn't he? And that sort of thing, right? So really putting down the righteousness and piety that really showed in a time when the believers were didn't need to do this, man. They didn't need to do this, but they did it out of love for the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and out of love for Islam and out of recognizing the importance of upholding the truth and going out and fighting for it as well. So he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ. So they were saying that, oh look, the Prophet is just taking people's money, right? So Allah revealed all of the people who had a right for charity, and they are 8 types. إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ. So those who are poor, right? وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. And they're another type of poor people. So fuqara and masakin. So the faqir is someone who لَا يَجِدُ قُوتَ يَوْمِهِ, who doesn't have food enough to last the day, right? He maybe has a food for maybe one meal, but he doesn't have food for the next day. And the masakin are those who don't have food for the year, right? So they don't have a stable job. They don't have enough savings to last them for any particular time or anything like that. So these are the masakin. وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا, and those who work in order to collect and spread the zakat, right? So this was like a full-time job, going out to people's farms and going out to the different cities and so on and so forth to collect the zakat. This was, they too have a right to a portion of the zakat. وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُم, the 4th type. The مُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُم are those who are new to Islam, and perhaps their family have disowned them and they have lost all of their wealth, for example, or those who require some encouragement to come into Islam and to believe. So certain contracts are made with them and so on and so forth, as was done with the Meccans who had newly entered Islam after the conquest of Mecca in the Battle of Hunain, just after the Battle of Hunain. I think we mentioned that yesterday, actually, briefly. So that's the 4th type. The 5th type, وَفِي الرِّقَابِ وَالْغَارِمِينَ وَفِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَبِنِ السَّبِيلِ. وَفِي الرِّقَابِ, those who are in bondship, so those slaves and servants who wish to be freed, they have a right to that zakat. So if someone doesn't have enough money to free a slave, for example, then that money can go towards freeing those slaves. وَالْغَارِمِينَ عَلَيْهَا. والغارمين. Al-Gharimin are those who are either in debt or have debts waiting to be collected. So they also have, or it's mainly for those who have debts. So the debtors or the indebted, what's the word for that in English? Indebted? I don't know. But anyway, those who have debts. So they are eligible for zakat as well. وَفِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, those who are wayfarers, those who are traveling, those who don't have any particular land. So immigrants, those who have come from a different country and so on and so forth, they are also eligible for zakat. فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ are those who are fighting in the way of Allah. My bad. Those who are fighting in the way of Allah in terms of jihad, going out in warfare and so on and so forth, they have a right to the zakat. وَبِنِ السَّبِيلِ, they also have a right to the zakat, and they are the wayfarer and the traveler that don't have a home to live in, which is commonly known as the immigrant in today's dialect. فَرِيضَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ. This is ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the all-knower, the all-wise. He understands why He has chosen these particular types of people for their zakat. Okay, what else is happening in this surah, in this particular part? Okay, so in ayah number 67, الْمُنَافِقُونَ وَالْمُنَافِقَاتُ بَعْضُهُم مِّن بَعْضٍ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمُنكَرِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَقْبِضُونَ أَيْدِيَهُم. Right? So check this eye out. The munafiqun and the munafiqat, those who have hypocrisy deeply rooted in their heart, from the men and the women. بَعْضُهُم مِّن بَعْض. They are one from another. Right? Birds of a feather flock together. They are two peas in a pod. يأمرون بالمعروف يأمرون بالمنكر. They ordain and they command and they encourage munkar, right? Evil. They indecency, disobedience. They encourage all of these things. وينهون عن المعروف. And they forbid good, righteousness, upright character, courage, right? They forbid all of those things and they discourage all of those things, right? And that is the exact opposite that we took in Surah Al-Imran, right? Where the Prophet, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes the believers that had been chosen. كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. You are the best of nations that have been taken out from mankind. Why? Because تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. You rise up to this responsibility. So here we have the munafiqun doing the opposite of what the believers do. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He goes on to rebut them. Ayah number 71, وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتُ بَعْضُهُم أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. Right? So the munafiqun and munafiqat, بَعْضُهُم مِّن بَعْضٍ. They are one from another, right? But they are not awliya of each other, right? Notice, in this ayah, الْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتُ بَعْضُهُم أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. Subhanallah. They are guardians and friends one to another. They look out for each other. They defend each other's honor, right? That is the situation of a believer. What do? يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. The exact opposite. They enjoin good and they forbid what is evil. They encourage all of those positive facets of the human character, and they push away and push back those tendencies that the human being has to be oppressive, to be a liar and a cheat, and so on and so forth. Okay, then we go on to the next section of this surah, which is when the Prophet ﷺ came back from Tabuk. Now, in this particular chapter, or in this particular section of Surah At-Tawbah, what's going to happen is we're going to see a lot of mention of those people who stayed behind from the munafiqun, who are going to come up with all sorts of excuses as to why they did, right? And the believers, some of those believers who stayed behind also, and why they stayed behind. With regards to the munafiqun, it's going to be very, very severe with regards to the Quranic revelation in terms of them, right? But in reality, the way the Prophet ﷺ dealt with them was with the utmost civility and with the utmost forgiveness as well. So when they came to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ, what was customary for him to do after every battle was to come back, and he would go to the masjid and he would pray two rak'ah of nafil, right? And then he will sit down and will sit with his people, and they will come to him, and they'll say salam to him. Those people who stayed in Medina from the old or the young, they would come and they'll give salam to him and so on and so forth, pray with him as well, and sit with him for a little while, and then he'll go to his family and rest. So while he was in the masjid, those people who had stayed behind from the hypocrites came to the Prophet ﷺ, and they came and they told him, they started to swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wallahi, we wanted to come, but we couldn't come, and this happened and that happened, please, please forgive us, and inshallah, next time you go on an expedition, we're definitely going to be there, right? This was what their what they were saying to him. And the Prophet ﷺ, in all civility, accepted their excuses. And he says, no worries, you're forgiven, it's all good, go on your way, it's okay, inshallah. And there was about 80 to 90, maybe 100 odd men that were doing this, right? One after the other, one after the other, one after the other. And they were all doing this. And the Prophet ﷺ, he accepted all of their excuses. But when the Qur'an came down in revelation about these people, it came down with the utmost of severity, right? Meaning that they showed civility. So the Prophet ﷺ, he returned that civility. But in their hearts was hiding a deep, cemented disbelief and hatred and envy and jealousy for the Prophet ﷺ, right? So just like that, revelation, which is a secret that no one can see except if when the Prophet ﷺ tells everybody, that was revealed in like. So the secret of the munafiqun was enmity and hatred. So the revelation was brought down in severity, exposing that hatred and enmity that they had for the Prophet ﷺ. So يحلفون بالله ما قالوا ولقد قالوا كلمة الكفر وكفروا بعد إسلامهم, right? blatant, just absolute exposition right here, right? That they're gonna come and they're gonna swear to you that they didn't say anything in terms of kufr, that they believe truly in their hearts, right? And nothing stopped them from going out except, their families, the business, or any other petty excuses that they bring up. But they certainly uttered a statement of kufr, of disbelief. وَكَفَرُوا بَعْدَ إِسْلَامِهِمْ, and they disbelieved after they professed to have entered into Islam. وَهَمُّوا بِمَا لَمْ يَنَالُوا, and they wished to achieve what they didn't acquire. And وَمَا نَقَمُوا إِلَّا أَنْ أَغْنَاهُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ, and they don't have this hatred in their hearts except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam from his abundant blessings. He's granted him victory, he's granted him riches, he's granted him all these things that they're seeing happening to the Prophet sallallahu, and they just can't take it. Every time something good happens to the Prophet sallallahu, وَإِن تُصِبْكُمْ حَسَنَةٌ تَسُؤْهُمْ, right? Anything good that happens to you, they hate it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to expose them, and he does that in the harshest of terms, and he goes on to expose how they're happy to actually stay behind. فَرِحَ الْمُخَلَّفُونَ بِمَقْعَدِهِمْ خِلَافَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ, they are happy that they are sitting back behind the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam while he's on the front lines. They are at the back and they are happy and they are laughing and they are making jokes. وَكَرِهُوا أَن يُجَاهِدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ وَأَنفُسِهِمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, and they hate to make any form of sacrifice with their wealth or their own selves for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. وَقَالُوا لَا تَنْفِرُوا فِي الْحَرِّ, and they said to everybody, and they encouraged everybody to stay behind. They said to them, don't go out in the heat, right? Because we mentioned that it was in the midsummer that the Prophet ﷺ was going to go out in the expedition of Tabuk. So فَإِنْ رَجَعَكَ اللَّهُ إِلَى طَائِفَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسْتَأْذَنُوكَ لِلْخُرُوجِ فَقُلْ لَا تَخْرُجُوا مَعِيَ أَبَدًا وَلَنْ تُقَاتِلُوا مَعِيَ عَدُوًّا, that if you return and a group of the hypocrites, they come and they ask you, Ya Rasulullah, we're sorry to have missed this battle, but inshallah the next battle, because obviously it was a massive victory, they went out to fight the Romans. They arrived on the battlefield at Tabuk and the Romans were nowhere to be seen. They didn't come because the Prophet ﷺ had preempted, because we said yesterday, right, that the Romans had prepared. They were in the preparation phase. Word got to the Prophet ﷺ, so he did his own preparations, mustered together about 10,000 men, and he went up to Tabuk. And when he arrived there, there was no one there, because once the Prophet ﷺ had got there, the Romans weren't ready to meet them in battle. And obviously in the back of Caesar's mind is that, look, man, this guy, he murked me with like 3,000 men, right? So if he's got like 5 times or 10 times that number, what is he going to do to my forces? And I'm not ready. So he didn't meet them in battle in the end, and they came back victorious, and everyone was like, oh my God, the Romans are scared of the Muslims. It's amazing. And they all came into Islam and so on and so forth. So anyway, so obviously the Munafiqun, they recognize this and they're like, whoa, the Muslims actually, they're serious guys. So they're like, okay, look, we didn't go out with you this time. Let's go out with you next time so that when you win, give us a bit of the spoils of war, please. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is revealing to the Prophet ﷺ that if they come to you and they ask you this, tell them no. They will not be allowed to fight with you in the future, and they will not be allowed to stand in the ranks with the Muslims against any enemy. And then he goes on to say, وَلَا تُصَلِّي عَلَىٰ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ مَاتَ أَبَدًا وَلَا تَقُمْ عَلَىٰ قَبْرِهِ, and do not stand in prayer, and do not pray upon any one of them that passes away. Ajib, that is so stern. And none of this was like in the mu'amala. None of this was in the way the Prophet ﷺ dealt with the hypocrites. Right? This was all revelation that was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ concerning them. Right? So you can imagine the Prophet ﷺ is being really civil to them. Right? Then the Qur'an comes down, and then he tells his companions, this is the Qur'an that was revealed to me just now, and he's reciting them. Everybody knows who it's about. Right? Even the hypocrites, they recognize that, oh my God, these are verses about us. We said that to the Prophet. Right? So subhanAllah, it's just basically they expected the Muslims to be annihilated by the Romans, and they were hoping that was going to happen. And now they are being annihilated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran. Ajib, man. Subhanallah. Hasad never gets you anywhere, guys. If you ever have jealousy of anybody, make sure you do ihsan to that person. Because whenever you have jealousy or envy and that animosity builds up in your heart, that animosity and that envy, it doesn't hurt anybody else but yourself. No matter how much you plot and plan to harm this person that you're envious towards, it's always going to come back on yourself. Always, every single time. Mark my words. This is like spelled out in like clear words in the Qur'an. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove that feeling if any one of us have that feeling. And it's a human trait, right? So it's not something that, oh, I have it, so I'm satanic or anything like that. It's a human trait to have that. And you're going to have it sooner or later in your life. But even if you think you don't have it now, you're going to have it soon with someone or something that's going to happen in your life. So if you ever are in that position where you feel that envy and animosity towards someone, always do ihsan to it, because the person who's ordering you to have that animosity and envy is shaitan. Always be disobedient to shaitan and be obedient to Allah. Allah wants from you ihsan, so be good to that person, and shaitan wants from you to have that animosity and do bad things to that person, backbite that person, slander that person. So always go against shaitan and always go with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, I digressed there and I lost myself. Where are we? Yeah, so do not pray over them. وَلَا تُصَلِّ عَلَىٰ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ مَاتَ أَبَدًا. So really, really severe, subhanallah. وَلَا تُعْجِبْكَ أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَأَوْلَادُهُمْ. Do not be like, do not be tricked by the fact that they are rich and they have many children, and they have like nice cars and big houses and so on and so forth. This stuff means absolutely nothing. There is no nobility in having a big house. There's just envy and jealousy from everybody else because of that. All right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to speak about those exempt from the battle. So in verse number 91 and 92, لَيْسَ عَلَى الضُّعَفَاء. So the weak don't have to go out and fight. وَلَا عَلَى الْمَرْضَى. Nor the sick. وَلَا عَلَى الَّذِينَ لَا يَجِدُونَ مَا يُنْفِقُونَ حَرَجٌ. Neither those who do not find any form of funding to be able to fund their campaign, because this was like a personal thing, right? So everybody who could afford to go and fight, subhanallah, again, man, like your own wealth, you fight. No one's paying you to fight, right? So nowadays you've got a soldier, he has a wage, and that wage is, for his services in the battlefield, right? But back then, the Sahaba, ridwanullahi alayhim, they fought with their own wealth. Their hard-earned money would go and they would spend in order to fight for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ajib, man. The iman levels are on another level. So these types of people, those who don't have enough money to fund themselves and they can't find like a riding beast, or they don't find any money to buy weaponry and so on and so forth, these guys, they are exempt from going out for the sake in the path of Allah. إِذَا نَصَحُوا لِلَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. As long as they give good counsel to Allah and His Messenger, meaning that they speak good words, they make dua for Allah and His Messenger, they make dua for the believers who are out there in battle and so on and so forth. ولا على الذين إذا ما أتوك لتحملهم قلت لا أجد ما أحملكم عليه. So those who can, nor is there any problem for those who come to you from amongst the believers and they ask you, Ya Rasulullah, allow me to come with you on this battle and take me on one of the riding beasts with anybody else. And we'll share, right? We'll take it in turns to go. And the Prophet ﷺ says, Wallahi, I don't have anybody that can take you, right? لا أجد ما أحملكم عليه تولوا وأعينهم تفيض من الدمع حزنا ألا يجدوا ما ينفقون. That they turn away, when the Prophet ﷺ turns away from them and they turn away from the Prophet ﷺ, their eyes are watering with tears, and tears are flowing down their faces because they do not find anything to spend in order to go out with the believers in this battle. Okay. We fast forward to verse number 106. وَآخَرُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about the hypocrites in this particular section. And He talks about those who believe and weren't able to go out. And from those who believe that weren't able to go out were three people. وَآخَرُونَ مُرْجَوْنَ لِأَمْرِ اللَّهِ إِمَّا يُعَذِّبُهُمْ وَإِمَّا يَتُوبُ عَلَيْهِمْ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ. In verse number 106, that there are other people who are hoping. Now, so this ayah was revealed after the Battle of Tabuk, right? The Prophet has come back. وَآخَرُونَ مَرْجُونَ لِأَمْرِ اللَّهِ. There are people who are hoping for the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to come. Either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishes them or He forgives them. Wallahu alimun hakim. And this was revealed with regards to three companions. Ka'b ibn Malik, and Murara ibn Rabi', and and Hilal ibn Umayyah. Hilal ibn Umayyah. So Ka'b ibn Malik, Murara ibn Rabi' and Hilal ibn Umayyah. These three people, they stayed behind and they were believers. So Murara and Hilal, they were both Sahabis who participated in the Battle of Badr. So 7 years ago, 7 years prior to this, they participated in the Battle of Badr. And the people who participated in the Battle of Badr were considered from the best of mankind. To the point where Jibreel alayhi salam, he asked the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who is, how do you consider those who fought in the Battle of Badr? The Prophet sallallahu said, we consider them the best of us. So they were the best of the Sahaba who fought in the Battle of Badr, right? So these two, they didn't go on this battle even though they could have. Ka'b ibn Malik also was another Sahabi, and he was young and he was rich, and he would say about this particular incident that, look, I didn't find in my entire life that I was strong enough or rich enough more than I was at that point when the call for to go on the expedition of Tabuk was made. And I said to myself that, yeah, inshallah, I'll make the preparations, inshallah. So I would go out one day in order to make those preparations and nothing would happen. And I'll go out the following day and do the same thing and nothing would happen. And he would meet up with his companions, for example, and they'll be talking about their preparations, and he'll be talking about what he wants to prepare and so on and so forth. And he's procrastinating in this way until the Prophet ﷺ began to leave. Right, the call to leave Medina and go on the way to Tabuk was made, and he found himself still. He has made no preparations, and he's not ready yet, and nothing is stopping him from getting ready. So he's thinking to himself, okay, you know what? Give me a day or two. I'll get my stuff ready, and then I'll catch up with the Sahaba. No problem. I'll catch up with the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm young, I'm fast, I'm fit. No problems. So the day, 2 days, 3 days go by. He still hasn't done anything. All that time goes by. Meanwhile, while the Prophet ﷺ is in Tabuk, he's asking about by the time they reach Tabuk, the Prophet ﷺ is asking about Ka'b ibn Malik. He's like, where is Ka'b? I haven't seen him from amongst us. What happened? Right? And some of the companions were sort of a bit slanderous, and so they said, he's been busied by his wealth and his family, and he doesn't want to be from amongst us, right? And so Mu'adh bin Jabal, I think it was, or Abdullah bin Mas'ud, one of the two, stood up in his defense and said, no, this is a terrible thing that you said. Ka'b ibn Malik is, he's one of the best from amongst us. We don't know anything of him except that is good. And Ka'b ibn Malik, he had participated in every single battle other than Badr. And obviously Badr wasn't actually going to be a battle like we took yesterday, right? So he had participated in pretty much everything. He was in the Bay'at al-Aqaba. He was there when the Ansar, when they made the pact to never ever, let down the Prophet ﷺ and never say no to him when he calls them to fight and when he calls for their aid and so on and so forth. He was there in all of the mashahid, but here for some reason he didn't go, right? So by the time the Prophet ﷺ is coming back now, he's thinking up of all of the excuses. He's like, oh no, like what shall I say to him? So he thought about a million excuses that he'd give to the Prophet ﷺ. And by the time the Prophet ﷺ had arrived in Medina, he decided that, look, nothing is going to get by the Prophet ﷺ. This guy, he is assisted by revelation. So if I was to lie to him, dude, I'm going to get it rough. And so nothing is going to aid me except the truth, right? And nothing ever aids a believer except that. So he goes to the Prophet ﷺ, and so the hypocrites are all coming and they're giving their excuses and so on and so forth. So Ka'b ibn Malik, he comes and he sees the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ smiles at him, right? But he smiles at him, like when someone is really, really angry at you, right? And he sees you and he smiles because he knows you're going to get it, right? So that's how the Prophet ﷺ was looking at Ka'b. So told him to come over. So Ka'b, he walks over, he sits down, and he says to him, the Prophet ﷺ says to Ka'b, what stopped you from coming out with us? So Ka'b is like, Wallahi, ya Rasulullah, I've thought of a million excuses. But I know that nothing will ever will ever bring me out of what I've done, and will never be a recompense for what I've done except the truth. And the truth is that nothing stopped me from coming out. Nothing. I had all the money and I had all the riches that I could possibly want, and I could afford to, to buy a horse and to buy all the necessary things and the provisions that I need for the journey and the fight and the way back and then some, but I didn't. So the Prophet ﷺ, he told him to go until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings his command, which is this ayah that we've just read, right? And so for about 40 days, Ka'b ibn Malik, he's left and he's being ignored by all of the companions, all of them, every single one of them. And some of them actually came out. When he came out of the masjid after he sat with the Prophet ﷺ and the Prophet told him to go, he stood up and he left. Some other Muslims came up to him and said, "Yeah, Ka'b, what's wrong with you, man? Why didn't you just, give an excuse to the Prophet ﷺ like everybody else did?" And he forgave them. He accepted their excuses, right? Outwardly, right? But then revelation came down and, really annihilated them. So Ka'b ibn Malik's like, should I have? And they did it to him so much that he actually thought about going back to the Prophet ﷺ and then coming up with a lie and an excuse for what he had done. But he didn't do it. And he stayed on course. So he asked them, is there anybody else in my situation? And they told him that Murara ibn Rabi' and Hilal ibn Umayyah, they both are in the same situation as you are. So he was like, okay, these guys were from Badr, right? So if they're telling the truth, then I'm okay. I'll be from amongst them at least, inshallah. So he goes on, and for 40 days this is going on. No one's saying salam to him. Even the Prophet ﷺ is not even, speaking to him. Ka'b would go in the masjid and pray, and he would pray with the companions, and no one would like chat to him or anything like that. And he would want to pray right next to the Prophet ﷺ, and he would look at the Prophet ﷺ's face to see if he's going to speak to him. He'll give him salam, like right in his face. He'll be like, "Assalamu alaikum," right in the face of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ would turn away. Every time Ka'b looked at him, he would turn away. Every time Ka'b turned away, the Prophet ﷺ would look at him, and the Prophet ﷺ's lips would move slightly, as if he's returning the salam but not actually saying it to him, and all this stuff. So he felt like that he was a proper outcast. And this went on for like 2 months. And in a place, Medina is like everyone knows everyone else, right? And a real community feeling and a real brotherhood and iman, and do you know what I mean? And all that stuff is gone. On top of that, the Prophet ﷺ told Ka'b ibn Malik and the other two that you're not allowed to stay with your wives, right? So now his one form of consolation, the only person in the entire city who's speaking to him is not allowed to be with him either. So she goes to her parents' house, and all sorts kicks off. Until finally, after a while, after one Fajr prayer, so he's praying Fajr on the roof of one of his houses, a call is made that Bushra lakum, and he hears it, right? It's pitch black. It's just Fajr time. He's just prayed his Fajr, and he hears this call in the dark of the night that Bushra lakum, right? Glad tidings, good news for you. And he immediately knew, Alhamdulillah, I've been forgiven. And so he comes out from his house, and suddenly all these people come out of nowhere. Some of them are riding on horses, some of them are coming towards him on foot, and they're all coming to him and congratulating him. And he goes to the Prophet ﷺ's house, the masjid of the Messenger ﷺ, where the Prophet ﷺ is sitting. And on his way, everyone's congratulating him, saying Mubarak to you, mashallah, it's amazing, and they're hugging him and shaking his hand and all sorts. And he's like getting so gassed. And by the time he gets there, the Prophet ﷺ, he sees him and he tells him that, you're forgiven and it's all good now, alhamdulillah. So Ka'b ibn Malik, he asked him, is this from you, Ya Rasulullah, or is it from Allah? He wants to know, have there been ayat revealed about me? And so the Prophet ﷺ says, yes, this is from Allah. And Allah revealed verses number 117, 118. وَعَلَى الثَّلَاثَةَ الَّذِينَ خُلِّفُوا حَتَّى إِذَا ضَاقَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَرْضُ بِمَا رَحُبَتْ وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ أَنفُسُهُمْ وَظَنُّوا أَنْ لَا مَلْجَأَ مِنَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا إِلَيْهِ ثُمَّ تَابَ عَلَيْهِمْ لِيَتُوبُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ. Subhanallah, what a beautiful ayah. That they were in a situation where they thought there was no exit from whatsoever, and that the earth was going to swallow them up, and that committing suicide was probably the best option for them, right? وَلَا مَلْجَأَ مِنَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا إِلَيْهِ ثُمَّ تَابَ عَلَيْهِمْ لِيَتُوبُوا. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He forgave them. He returned to them so that they would return to Him. Wallahu wat-tawwabur rahim. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the oft forgiving and the most merciful. SubhanAllah. What a story, eh? What a story. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He finishes this surah, and we'll finish this surah here with verse number 128 and 129. لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. Right? A reminder that verily a messenger has come from amongst you. Azizun alayhi ma anittum. It is severe, it is precious. He feels what you have felt. The hardships and the angst that you are going through, it touches his heart. Harisun alaykum. He is forever caring over you. It concerns him the things that happen to you. Bil mu'minina ra'ufur rahim, and he is for the believers ra'ufun rahim, compassionate and merciful. Subhanallah. That is the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And with that finishes Surah At-Tawbah, and then we go on to Surah An-Yunus. Let's take a little bit of a breather, inshallah, and see what's happening in the world of Zoom and YouTube. Okay, so Hussein is giving a shout out to Dr. Imran. So Dr. Imran, he wants to thank you for fixing his arm. So Jazakallah khair for that. MashaAllah. So usually what would happen is in the masjid, Hussein would come, Dr. Imran would come. Hussein would say, thank you, Dr. Imran, for fixing my arm. And Dr. Imran would say, yeah, Jazakallah khair, this is my, this is an obligation on me as a Muslim brother, and I love you for the sake of Allah, and so on and so forth. And, they would get their rewards like that. But seeing as they're not able to do that, I am their the Hamzat al-Wasl. Okay. What should someone do if they had a nail-sized plaster on, which was not totally needed whilst doing ghusl? A nail-sized plaster on. Okay, I see. Is this ghusl still valid, as that area may not have been wet if they have prayed with it on? Do they need to repeat the prayer? No. So anything that you have on in terms of plaster or bandage or anything like that, if water touching that area is going to be harmful to whatever has afflicted you there from a cut or whatever, then you can just do Mosque over it, which is a dry wipe, and wash over the rest of your body. So say if it's on your hand or your arm, for example, you wash the rest of your body, and that particular area you try and keep dry as much as possible, and you just wipe over it, inshallah, and dryness. If it's okay for a little bit of wetness to go on it, then with a wet wipe, you just dab it with a damp hand, inshallah. But the ghusl is perfectly valid, and prayers are valid like that as well, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Hamid. Wa alaikum salam. It's stated a lot that the hypocrites will be the lowest level in Jahannam. Is this punishment just being a hypocrite against Islam, or being a general hypocrite in society as a whole? So there are two types of hypocrite. There's only one type of hypocrite, which is a hypocrite, but there are characteristics of a hypocrite. So the Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he reserves the punishment in the lowest form of the hellfire for the person who is a hypocrite through and through, right? And the Prophet he mentions in a number of ahadith certain characteristics that if a person has all of these, كَانَ مُنَافِقًا خَالِصًا, that he is a pure hypocrite, and he is the one في الدرك الأسفل من النار, that is reserved for him. But there are also these characteristics that if someone has them, and a Muslim may have them, but he is considered a believer, he believes in Allah on the last day, but he has certain qualities and characteristics that he just needs to get over. And from them might be as simple as promising to meet someone at a certain time and not going to meet them, right? Or lying about something when you don't need to lie about it. Yeah, these are characteristics of nifaq. The person who has these sorts of things, it may not be reserved for him the lowest form of the fire, but these things are qualities of a munafiq and should be avoided. And the thing with this, right, is that when you have one particular characteristic, that always wants another characteristic to come onto it as well. So very dangerous and very slippery slope to be on. Okay. How can we safeguard ourselves from becoming munafiq? So to safeguard yourself from becoming a munafiq is doing everything that is opposite from what a munafiq does, which is to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the utmost bottom of your heart, to be congruent. So whatever's in your inside shows on your outside, and not whatever is in your outside is different from what is in your inside. And to do righteous deeds, and to give in charity, because the munafiqun, they don't give in charity, they don't give, and it makes the hard heart, right? Makes the heart hard. Yeah, sorry. Against the munafiqs in the world, when Umar radiallahu anhu himself appointed some as governors, only removing them after asking Hudayfa. Yeah. So with regards to how to deal with munafiqs, you deal with them as the Prophet ﷺ dealt with them. When they show you ihsan, you deal with them with ihsan. When they show you goodness, you deal with them with goodness. And if anything evil comes from them, then you respond with what is best in terms of the situation. But as for like, pointing fingers, you're a munafiq, you're going to the hellfire, and that sort of thing, that's definitely not what the Prophet ﷺ did. Okay. All right, let's go back, inshallah. I know there's quite a few other questions that are floating around. I'm going to get back to them, inshallah, in a few minutes, inshallah. But let's go to Surah Yunus, and let's cover some of the topics that we're going to be covering in that, inshallah. So Surah Yunus is a Meccan surah, and this is the first, obviously named after the Prophet Yunus alayhi salam. And Yunus alayhi salam is most notable for being swallowed by a whale. And the story behind that is that he went to his people, he called them to Allah, they rejected him, so he left angrily, and he went on a boat, and a storm kicked up while he was on that boat, and they wanted to draw lots as to who from amongst the people in that boat was going to go overboard, so that the boat would be easier to manage because there was too many people on board. So every time they drew lots, it was Yunus alayhi salam's name that came out every single time, without fail. So, but he was a prophet from amongst them. So that every single time his name came out, they said, no, you're not going to do it. So they did it again. And then his name came out again. They're like, no, you're not going to do it. And then they did it again. It's like, no, you're not going to go. So every single time they did that. But in the end, Yunus alayhi salam, he went himself and he jumped overboard. The whale swallowed him up. How long the whale swallowed him up for, it's unknown. Probably not for that long, but he spat him out, and he spat him out onto like a sort of a deserted area. Then while he was in the stomach of the whale, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to him the famous dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet said about it, that if anybody finds himself in any situation and he was to say this dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will alleviate him of any problems that he is going through in that particular situation. So it was La ilaha illa anta subhanak inni kuntu min al-zalimin. Okay, so this is not coming up in this surah. This is in Surah Anbiya, so it's going to be tackled later on, inshallah. So we'll get to that later. But in this surah, it's called Surah Yunus because Yunus is mentioned only once, actually, in the entire surah. And his story isn't actually mentioned. And he's only spoken about in one ayah, and that's ayah number 96, I think, or 98. Quite late on, inshallah. But anyway, so this is a Meccan surah, and we've said previously about Meccan surahs about how they are particular in terms of their content. So they talk a lot about Tawheed, establishing Tawheed, because they were dealing with the polytheists in Mecca, right? And we said the Meccan surahs are those surahs that were revealed before the Hijrah. The thing about the Meccan surahs is that it's quite difficult to discern when and what time they were revealed in. That's because, as opposed to Medinan surahs, because the Medinan surahs, we have like, the battles that took place, we have certain incidents and stuff like that, that the ayat were revealed specifically because of, right? And because the Medinan period is documented in grave detail, it's quite easy to source the ayat. So the Medinan surahs are quite good like that. Whereas the Meccan surahs are quite difficult, and you kind of have to sort of contemplate the content of it for quite a long time in order to discern, okay, what is happening and who's it talking about and when was it kind of revealed. What helps us though in this is that the Meccan period is, there are certain incidents that happened in the time when the Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca. So for example, when the Prophet ﷺ first was given revelation, his da'wah was very secretive, right? So it was done in secrecy. It wasn't done in front of everybody. It was done for specific people who seemed to have the most promise in terms of accepting the call of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So that's sort of that period lasted for about 3 odd years. There are things that happened in the Prophet's life in Mecca, for example, when he was really, really marginalized, and the mushrikun of Quraysh in Mecca, they pushed the believers so far as to seek refuge in a valley that belonged to Abu Talib. And they were incarcerated there, and they weren't allowed to leave, and provisions were very few and far between, and so on and so forth. So really like a sort of like a prison, if you like, they were put in. So that was a significant event. The death of Abu Talib and the death of Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha as well, that was a significant event. That's called Am al-Huzn. That was around the 10th year after prophethood. And then obviously the years leading up to the Hijrah as well. So when we take all of these things into account, we kind of get a little bit of a picture about what the Meccan period is and where the surahs were revealed. So Surah Yunus is kind of towards the end. It could possibly be after the Am al-Huzn, so after the death of Abu Talib, or before. It's kind of a little bit hazy in that one. But it's definitely towards the end and closer to the Hijrah. In it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is obviously establishing all those things that are related to Tawheed and negating all those things that are related to Shirk. He is also affirming, rebutting some of the blatant misconceptions that the kuffar of Quraysh had and the polytheists had in general. And also he is clearing the misconceptions that they have with regards to prophethood and revelation, and a lot of the things about the hereafter, a lot of descriptions about the akhirah are given in these particular surahs, in Surah Yunus in particular as well. In this surah, we're going to hear mention of the story of Nuh alayhi salam, but very, very briefly. So from the verses 71 to 73, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to mention the Nuh alayhi salam and a little bit about his story. And then from 75 to 93, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to mention the story of Musa alayhi salam. But this time, the story of Musa alayhi salam is going to be very different. So we mentioned before about how the stories are mentioned, and they're mentioned only in certain parts and segments, right? And whatever the content of that particular surah is, that's what part of the story will become relevant and be mentioned in that particular surah. So here, in this particular surah, the story of Musa is the part about when Musa alayhi salam, he goes to Fir'aun. In fact, let's have a look at it. Let's go to verse number 75. Sulaiman is doing this with his hands, telling me to wrap up. I know the time. But let's have a look at it, inshallah, just to see where it starts off, to jog my memory as well. قال موسى أتقولون للحق لما جاءكم أسحر هذا ولا يفلح الساحرون. So are you rejecting this truth and saying that it's just magic, it's just plain magic, right? قالوا أجئتنا لتلفتنا عما وجدنا عليه آباءنا وتكون لكم الكبرياء في الأرض وما نحن لكما بمؤمنين. And so the reply of Fir'aun and his mala is أجئتنا لتلفتنا عما وجدنا عليه آباءنا. Have you come with this message only to divert us from what we found our forefathers upon? Who else said this? I think I know. The kuffar of Quraysh also said this to the Prophet ﷺ. We found our parents upon this. You are coming with something else. What is this that you're saying? وَتَكُونَ لَكُمَ الْكِبْرِيَاءُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And so that you two, aka Musa and Harun, only you two, now you guys are in the lead. You guys have the power. Basically, you guys have come with this message just to take power off us, which is exactly the same claim that the mushrikun of Quraysh made against the Prophet ﷺ. وَمَا نَحْنُ لَكُمَا بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. And we are not, with regards to you, believers. We don't believe you in any way, shape, or form, which is exactly the same reaction that the kuffar of Quraysh had with the Prophet ﷺ. So that's the part of the story that is going to come up with regards to Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun and his people, and it's very, very pertinent to what was happening to the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca at that particular time. فلولا كانت قرية آمنت فنفعها إيمانها إلا قوم يونس لما آمنوا كشفنا عنهم عذاب الخزي في الحياة الدنيا ومتعناهم إلى حين. So the verse number 98, Yunus is mentioned, and the reason why he's mentioned, and this particular part of history, because he's mentioned throughout the Qur'an, he's mentioned in Surah As-Saffat quite a bit, he's mentioned in Surah Al-Anbiya as well, and in many other places. So the reason why he's mentioned here in this particular surah with this particular mention is that Yunus's people, from amongst all of the prophets that came and warned their people of a severe punishment, Yunus alayhi salam's people were the only ones to actually take heed and repent when the punishment was about to come to them. So Yunus alayhi salam, he came, he warned his people, they rejected him initially, and the punishment was going to come. Yunus alayhi salam left. When he left, they began to make dua and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his forgiveness, and they repented to Allah and believed. Right? So the mention of that particular part of the story is mentioned here. This is almost like consoling the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that although, look, they may be disbelieving in you now, but there will come a time when they will believe just as Yunus alayhi salam's people believed. So just have faith, have iman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you, and He will cause you to come out of what you are currently in. Okay, So I think well, that's what we'll mention for now with regards to Surah Yunus. And Surah Hud is the next surah that's going to come up. In this particular juz, we mentioned the beginning part of Surah Hud is mentioned, but we're not going to tackle it until tomorrow, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, which brings part number 11 of our Quranic synopsis to an end. Jazakumullahu khaira for your patience and listening. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So let's return now to the mandam. So let's have a look. So let's go to YouTube, because I know there's quite a few people on YouTube. Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. Some people, critics, that if will not give money to beggars, then they will not beg anymore, and they are also with good physical condition. I don't understand the question, unfortunately. So, okay, I'm sorry about that. That's probably my own understanding, and maybe the fast is getting to me. So apologies for that, Atiyah. If we inhale anything not by mouth but by syringe, etc., then there will be okay. Does inhaling or injecting break your fast? Inhaling doesn't break your fast unless you do it purposefully. So you're purposely inhaling in order to get some sustenance from it. But if you're walking down the street or you're walking past someone who's got really nice perfume on and that goes in and it goes inside and like, oh no, what's going to happen? Then that is muhtafar, so that doesn't affect your fast whatsoever. Taking a syringe, there's quite a bit of detail in that. And I prefer not to go into it just at the moment, inshallah. Maybe another time we can cover it, inshallah. But in summary, if the syringe has no sort of taghdiya to it, so it doesn't have any food stuff ingredients, so it doesn't give you energy and so on and so forth, then that particular type of syringe is not permissible. Okay, let's see what's happening. Athar Hussein has got a question. Allahu Akbar. Forgive my ignorance. It is forgiven. My ignorance, inshallah, I hope is also forgiven from you guys. As Allah is the all-knowing, why does He put two angels on our shoulders to record what we do, since He does not need that record? That record is for us, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need anything. If we were to look at everything in that lens, Allah's need and His not need, nothing would be necessary. This earth, everything that He created, the heavens, the earth, His angels, the creations that we know of, the creations that we don't know of, all of it doesn't matter. All of it, there's no need for it whatsoever, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's free of need. So it's not Allah that needs. So never look at the creation of Allah or the revelation of Allah or anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that Allah somehow needs this. This is all put in place for His creation, right? This is for the tasghir of us. And the reason why He's put these two angels in order to write our deeds is firstly to remind us of our hisab, right? That we are going to be nothing. لا يلفظ من قول لديه إلا لا يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد. That He doesn't mention any statement, any word, except that He has two scribes writing down the two scribes writing down on His left and right. So that on the Day of Judgment, there is nothing that we can have an excuse for in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not that Allah needs a proof, but we have an excuse. So on the day, when someone gives proof to us, we do some mental gymnastics and say, no, I didn't mean what I said, right? So you get out of certain situations. On that day, everything is going to be written down to us. Everything is going to be written down for us, and it's going to be shown to us in the form of a book, right? And that book doesn't necessarily have to be just writing. It might be like in a movie type thing. You have it at your phone. You can see it all. You can see a film. It's like someone's been recording you the whole time and you're just seeing it all happen in front of you, subhanAllah. So that's for you not to have an excuse on the Day of Judgment. Hope that answers the question, inshallah. Umar Khan, salam, question. As we know, Allah can do any task without getting tired and can do it perfectly. So why does Allah have angels to do tasks? I think the previous answer, inshallah, should cover this one, inshallah ta'ala. Also to show the magnificence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the might and the majesty, that He's doing things that are unfathomable to us, that we can't see and we can't sense and we can never get to the reality of, right? So no matter how amazing our creation gets, right? And if we look at the modern world, it's an amazing sight to behold. But no matter how far we get in terms of our technologies and our innovations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has outdone us from day, man. SubhanAllah. So just stay humble, guys. Stay humble. Jazakallah khair for your du'as as well, guys, mashallah. When is dua answered? As I heard, it is just before Maghrib and Fajr. I know that Allah goes down to the lowest level of Jannah for Fajr, but what is the reason for Maghrib? Just before Maghrib and Fajr. Okay. So the Maghrib thing escapes my mind at the moment. I think I could probably get a more precise answer for you, but I'll have to look it up, inshallah. Okay, Khalid, mashallah. Sheikh Khalid has got a really good one. So the dua of the fasting person when he breaks his fast, that is the time when he breaks his fast, isn't it? So that's when it's answered. Mashallah, that's ilhamat from a believer right there. Alhamdulillah. But yeah, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has He's set for us all these different times in the day. That is for us to encourage us to make dua and not just specify one time, right? So someone says, okay, if you make dua before Maghrib, that's the dua that that's the time that you make dua. So no one makes any dua for the rest of the day just in that particular time. Well, someone says the only time you should make dua is in Laylatul Qadr, right? In Ramadan. So everybody comes to the masjid Laylatul Qadr in Ramadan on the 27th night, makes dua and goes home for the rest of the year and does whatever he wants, right? That's not what Allah wants from us. We're not a ritualistic nation, right? We have certain things that we do, right? Certain acts of worship, but they're not rituals in the sense that they're just done for the sake of doing them, right? They're there to discipline us. They're there to give us structure, and they're there to constantly remind us and keep us connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ameen, ameen. Jazakumullah khair for your du'as. Hussein, sorry, AA, isn't that being dishonest rather than hypocrite? Is it then best to walk away from them? I don't know what you're referring to, AA. So let me know what you're referring to. Hussein, can you touch upon the standard of living of the Prophet ﷺ, especially in light of the spoils of war being put in his possession? Sure, but inshallah, I'll touch on it another time, inshallah. Because of the time, I don't think I'll be able to cover that right now. Okay. So I am trying to understand the story and implications to current situation. The actions or inaction of the Sahabas to persuade him to go the expedition, would that mean that there should be a limit as to how much one can push someone towards a good deed or a specific action, such as even praying salah? Yeah, of course. What's it called? لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِمُسَيْطِرٍ. You're not in control of anybody. So even if you wish good for people and you encourage them to do good and you encourage them to pray and stuff, whether they pray or not, that's entirely up to them. That's entirely up to them. That's not your choice to make. So that goes to show as well, لا إكراه في الدين, right? There's no compulsion in religion. فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. That's going to come up in Surah Al-Kahf. Whoever wishes to believe, believes. And whoever wishes to disbelieve, disbelieves. Whoever wishes to do good, then it is for them. And whoever wishes to do bad, then they have to live up to the consequences, inshallah. If we only make dua for Allah to solve the problems of the ummah and do not enjoin the good and forbid the evil, will the dua be accepted? Allah is in charge of whose dua is accepted and whose is rejected. So there are certain things that inhibit the dua, like eating haram and drinking haram and stuff. But ultimately, that's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question. Okay, وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعلنا هداة مهتدين ولا تجعلنا ضالين مضلين. اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها. اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية في ديننا ودنيانا. اللهم استر عوراتنا وآمن روعاتنا. اللهم احفظنا من بين أيدينا ومن خلفنا وعن أيماننا وعن شمائلنا ومن فوقنا ونعوذ بعظمتك أن نغتال من تحتنا. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من زوال نعمتك ومن تحول عافيتك ومن فجاءة نقمتك ومن جميع سخطك. اللهم تقبل منا صيامنا وقيامنا وركوعنا وسجودنا وقراءتنا وتسبيحنا وتحميدنا وتكبيرنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم لا تدع لنا في هذا المجلس ذنبا إلا غفرته، ولا مريضا إلا شفيته، ولا ذا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا إلا قضيت حاجته يا رب العالمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم يا مصرف القلوب صرف قلوبنا إلى طاعتك. اللهم ثبتنا على صراطك المستقيم. اللهم ارزقنا الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. اللهم ارزقنا اتباع نبيك صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم احشرنا في زمرة الأنبياء والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا. اللهم أدخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من خزي النار. اللهم باعدنا بين النار كما باعدت بين المشرق والمغرب. اللهم باعد بيننا وبين النار كما باعدت بين المشرق والمغرب. اللهم نقنا من خطايانا كما ينقى الثوب الأبيض من الدنس. واغسلنا بالماء والثلج والبرد يا رب العالمين ويا أكرم الأكرمين. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين آمين. جزاكم الله خير for your time, guys, and I look forward very much so to seeing you tomorrow. Please take a few moments inshallah to make dua for yourselves and for myself and for the ummah at large, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakum Allahu khaira. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.